Hi, it's me, Tracy. I'm so glad you're here today to share a cup of tea with me and to talk about books, talk about our reading from the month of February. February is a short month, but for myself, there has been a lot of reading, and I look forward to sharing it with you. So if you haven't already, make your cup of tea, your coffee, your lemonade, whatever you like, and come right back. I'll be waiting for you. First up, I'm sharing a book about love, which seems appropriate since February holds the day of Valentine's Day, Love Day. And I have read The 40 Rules of Love by Elif Shafak. Maybe we can talk about the cover art in a moment. This was a love story of a different kind. In this novel, we meet Ella Rubinstein. She's 40, she's midlife, she has a husband, a family, everything is sort of filtered through her marriage and family. But there are cracks in the facade, in the foundation, and by all appearances, her life seems perfect. The husband, the family, the home, the car, all of those things, but there are cracks in the surface. And she takes up a job as a reader for a literary agency, and she encounters Aziz Safara, and he has written a manuscript chronicling the friendship between the 13th century well-known mystic poet Rumi and his friend and mentor, spiritual collaborator, Shams of Tabriz. And he has written a novel about this friendship. And Ella and Aziz become acquainted through her reading his work. She is reading his manuscript. And Rumi and Shams were, of course, known for their high focus on love and love being connected to God, seeking the love of God, of oneness, the truth of all things. Ella is in a very fragile state and seeking love in her life. And it is through the reading of this manuscript and the mystic poets that things become, they're opening up for her. She's asking questions about life, about love, seeking her own truths. And the story is very beautifully constructed in that it sort of flip-flops between Ella's story and the story that Aziz has written. The author has handled that very, very deftly, moving between Ella and this story. And it really is very beautiful. It's very lush. Questions about love abound. What we think about love, what we seek when we think we are seeking love, questions of spirituality, religion, basically all the big questions of life. I myself, as a woman in midlife, appreciated this book very much, as in recent years I myself am asking the big questions of life, as I stand kind of in a middle point, and I can look backward on my life and I can see there is more ahead, and what do I want that to look like? Ultimately, I feel like this book is about asking the big questions of life, meeting them unafraid, the questions, asking the questions, and being equally unafraid of what answers you find in your heart. If this is a different kind of love story, is what you might be looking for, then I can really recommend this one. Back to the cover art, I felt that this Penguin edition did not do this story justice in terms of the cover art. I find cover art fascinating. I know that there are other editions of this book, The 40 Rules of Love, that have a much more vibrant cover that engages the potential reader. And I often wonder how it is that a book so powerful about love can have this sort of diluted gray and white script for the text. I'm not so sure about this, but don't let this particular cover fool you. Do check this out if you are looking for a different kind of love story and seeking answers to your own questions about life and love. Next, I would like to share Peace Like a River by Leif Enger. This is a work of fiction, and it is set in the 1960s Minnesota and the Badlands of North Dakota. And I would just read the synopsis for you. Enger brings us 11-year-old Reuben Land, an asthmatic boy in the Midwest who has reason to believe in miracles. Along with his sister and father, Reuben finds himself on a cross-country search for his outlaw brother, who has been controversially charged with murder. Their journey unfolds like a revelation, and its conclusion shows how family, love, faith can stand up to the most terrifying of enemies and most tragic of fates. This book had such an old-fashioned charm. It feels a little bit like stepping back in time, maybe even possibly more back in time longer back in time than the 1960s. And there's elements of suspense to the story, twists and turns along the way that this family meets with such heartbreak while they're on the road, but they meet people along the way, so that there's this beautiful juxtaposition of heartache, heartbreak, but also heartwarming moments. And I felt like there was just such a profound beauty in some of the sadness, and it makes you think a lot about love and family, faith. What is faith? What is God? There's quite a lot of spirituality underlying the story. It's a ribbon that runs through the whole story. For Reuben, faith and belief in miracles, hope, is a very, very strong thing, as this family could be torn apart by what it experiences. I would just read a short little passage. The story is very masterfully written from the perspective of young Reuben. He has a very a quirky, kind of confident way of expressing what he has experienced. It reminded me a little bit of The Demon Copperhead, Barbara Kingsolver's wonderful novel, which I did highlight in my top books from 2024. It reminded me a little bit of that sort of confident, young but very confident voice. The truth is, I didn't think much on this until a dozen years later, beyond, of course, savoring the fact that I'd begun life in a dangerous and thus romantic manner. When you were 7 years old, there's nothing as lovely and tragic as telling your friends you were just about dead once. It made Dad my hero, as you might expect. Won him my forgiveness for anything that he might do forever. But until later events, it didn't occur to me to wonder why. I was allowed, after all, to breathe and keep breathing. Breath makes it possible for us to be alive, and young Reuben is especially fixated on breath, being asthmatic, and he has some very difficult experiences with his asthma. And we keep coming back to the breath, the being alive. What is keeping us alive? And a big answer to that could be love, faith, family, and trust in all of those things. If you're looking for a family drama, you might enjoy this one too. I remember this book when it was first out in the early 2000s, and I had missed it then. I was in a period of time where I was reading a lot of nonfiction on learning a lot of different topics. So it was a lot of nonfiction at the time. And I love the title, Peace Like a River. It just offered such a comforting thought, just the title alone. And somehow through these years, they went by and I was at the library and here it was waiting for me after all this time. And I am certainly very glad that I read this. I would like to read more by this author. I believe he also writes sort of a thriller suspense novels along with his brother, Enger. So more good things to check out. And from the library too. And last for fiction category today, I have one more novel, a Star Wars novel, I, Jedi by Michael Stackpole, who has written a number of Star Wars related books as well as others in the fantasy genre. This one was a lot of fun. I am a big Star Wars fan, so is my husband TJ. We love Star Wars. This one is an older one, I believe from the mid to late 90s. And I will read the synopsis because it's really wonderful. Corran Horn has distinguished himself as one of the best and brightest of Rogue Squadron's elite fighting force. Then his wife, Mirax, vanishes on a covert mission for the New Republic, and Corran vows to find her. To do so, he knows he must develop latent talent force, inherited from his grandfather, a legendary Jedi hero. He joins Luke Skywalker's famed Jedi Academy to begin training, only to quit in frustration with Skywalker's methods. Now Corran is on his own. Using his Corellian undercover experience, he must infiltrate, sabotage, and destroy a ruthless organization in order to find his wife. But to succeed, Corran will have to come to terms with his Jedi heritage and make a terrible choice. Surrender to the dark side or die. This book was very engaging. Something that I like about most of the Star Wars novels is how the authors just punch you into the action, and even when they're not maybe some of the most famous characters from the movies and such, they're always so well done, and I really enjoyed this one. The adventures of Corran, searching for his wife and battling with his own inner demons, as it was his own inner Jedi, his Force abilities. It was really very wonderfully done, and it made me feel like it's a pity that some more of the characters from the books aren't brought to life in some of the live action television shows. I would really like to see Corran Horn in live action. Maybe somebody's watching and will be seeing this and decide to bring him into a story. I really loved his character arc, the development of his character through the whole of this story. And I love all of the Star Wars books. Most of them, I just flip through them, not flip through them, but I flip through them in a sense that I'm not particularly reading them in any order unless they need to be. Some of the newer books, like from the High Republic, for instance, it's often good to read them in order. But some of the older ones, I just pick them up mostly from the library and just read them and enjoy them as standalones. This was a lot of fun. If you're a Star Wars fan, let me know in the comments, and let me know if you have read this one or if you've read one of the more current Star Wars novels. I would like to hear. I don't have any poetry as such today, but poetry adjacent in a nonfiction aspect. I have read this month a poetry handbook, a prose guide to understanding and writing poetry by Mary Oliver. And this is Mary Oliver with her famed wit, wisdom, and wonder, giving us, the reader, the scholar, the writer of poetry, the mechanics of poetry, breaking down the craft of it. Everything from tone, rhyme, meter. She's breaking down everything, the components of poetry, for our better understanding and for our betterment as writers of poetry. And she gives many examples peppered throughout the book from writers through many ages, choice pieces of poetry, breaking them down and showing us the why. And then we can wonder. I have found this book extremely invaluable, both as a great reader of poetry, but also writing poetry myself. It's a book that I've been dipping in and out of, reading each chapter slowly at a time, taking it in, and then later I go and I sit with the chapter, thinking about it. I sit with my pen and my paper and my thoughts, and then I put that pen to paper, and hopefully I am learning more with each chapter, thanks to Mary Oliver. This is a wonderful book. I can recommend it for any lover of poetry, a reader of poetry, or those who also love to write poetry as well. I have also been reading a book by the poet and philosopher David Whyte, Consolations, The Solace, Nourishment, and Underlying Meaning of Words. This book contains essay-like pieces on words, many words that are ingrained in our lives, and words that perhaps are sometimes misused, misunderstood. They've become so saturated in the language that sometimes maybe the deeper meanings or meanings that they have had before have maybe not been eroded, but they're being used in different ways. Word love, for instance. I've been using that word to express my appreciation for some of the books that I've been reading. That word it's very akin to the word like, isn't it? We're using words differently, interchangeably sometimes. So this is examining some pretty powerful words, such as anger, beauty, disappointment, heartbreak, joy, memory, procrastination, regret. A lot of big words that are connected to our humanness and the deeper connections that we have with words, or potentially could have, if we are taking the time to look into those words and what they actually mean. I really have always loved the work, there I did it, the word love. I've always liked the work of David Whyte, and especially coming from the angle of a philosopher as well. This book has a lot of jewels in it, hidden treasure, with each word. And this is, I've read this book many times. It's one I keep coming back to. I suppose I'm a great appreciator of words and what they can do, what they can express. And this was a book that helps us to better understand words and the emotions behind them, and that we may learn to see them anew, that we may see them with fresh eyes. I can recommend this book for anyone who is also an appreciator of poetry, but also is wondering about what's behind the words? What are they really meaning? And especially some of these most powerful words that are part of our humanness. They're part of our lives and in our hearts. It's a good examination tool for our hearts, our minds, and our lives. I can really recommend this book. Some more fun manga this time. Spy Family 3. I've just read volume 3. And the adventures of Master Spy Twilight and his fake family of wife Yor, who is secretly an assassin, and daughter Anya, who is a telepath and who can read everyone's minds. Well, the adventures are misadventures, and it's a lot of fun. This time, there is a bit more disaster on the horizon when Yor's brother Yuri comes to visit, and it turns out that he works for the Secret Service police, and that could be trouble for Twilight. And young Anya is at a special school, an academy, and trying to rise in the ranks of academia and other activities with mixed results, shall we say. It seems one step forward, two steps back sometimes. And this was a really fun episode. It wasn't so much about the bigger missions as such, but just more on the domestic scale. Twilight and Yor had a date. They tried to have what looked like a real date, which was not what most people would dream of for a first date. And towards the end of the book, it looked like maybe they were getting a family pet. I guess I will find out more in volume 4. I'm going to be ordering that from the library this week. I'll say it again, it is just so much fun. Spy Family. I'm really enjoying this manga series so much. And lastly, in the manga category, or comics, I have Under the Oak Tree, a story by Suji Kim, and the artwork is by an illustrator artist simply known as P. And I will read the synopsis on the back for you. When stuttering Lady Maximilian is forced to marry Sir Riften, a low-born knight caught in one of her father's schemes, her stumbling communication and his gruff manner sour their relationship before it can even begin. Riften leaves for war the morning after their disastrous wedding night, and it's 3 years until Maxie sees him again. Now the husband she barely knows is a war hero, and when he comes home to claim her, Maxie will need to master her own bewildering desire, as well as Riften's, before she can hope to become true mistress of their enormous castle. The task will demand courage from Maxie, even as she struggles to find her own voice. This is such a beautiful book, and I love the story. I first encountered it in its web novel format on Manta, which is a great online source for manga, for comics. And TJ also loved it so much that we bought the book to have for our little library corner here. And he is more fond of hard copy format as opposed to digital. So it's just a treat to have experienced both in its web comic format as well as the book. The beauty of the book is wonderful. I will do a cutaway so that you can have a little peek at the interior. The story is really quite beautiful, and it has a medieval setting, as you maybe could guess from the cover. And it's very sweet because Maxie is full of anxiety, and she has never left the castle that she lived in. Her father is abusive, both verbally and physically abusive to her. And suddenly she's into an arranged marriage, a forced marriage because of political reasons, and we learn more throughout the story, the whys behind all of that. And Riften is a knight. He's a lowly knight. He has a low standing when he meets Maxie, and he goes off to war, and he's gone for 3 years, and he returns a hero. He returns a man of great stature. He is and a wealthy man as well. And poor Maxie, she has a speech impediment. She stutters, and it causes a lot of problems for herself as well as others around her. And Riften returns, and they are trying to communicate. And the communication is very stop and go. And not just because of Maxie's speech impediment, but because they do not know each other. And the story chronicles them getting to know each other. And it is very sweet. It's a bit of a slow burn romance in some ways, although physical love is part of the story, is part of the book. There is for this comic there is an age recommendation, 16 plus, and it is very spicy in some parts, and I would give it my my 2 chili rating for spice, sweet and spicy. The story is really lovely, and this contains the episodes 1 to 24, and the second volume will be released sometime in the spring, I believe, so I'm looking forward to that. Under the Oak Tree, a comic. I will do a cutaway so that you can see a little bit of the illustrations, the beautiful illustrations that pair with a really powerful story. I can recommend this one if you like comics or if you like graphic novels. This one is a lot of fun, and it will be great to see how the story continues. I'm really looking forward to the continuation of Maxie and Riften's love story. Time for our tea break. I have a English breakfast tea. I needed a little extra boost this morning. I find English breakfast tea does that for me. I have my I have my fun Han Solo mug. There's a matching Princess Leia mug out in the kitchen. Husband TJ and I, we swap them out and use them together. The Princess Leia says, "I love you." Han Solo says, "I know." If you know, you know. You know the scene. It's very fun. Picking up the Star Wars theme. Let me know what you're drinking today for our tea break. Or if you have no time to leave me a comment, just leave me a teacup emoji or a book emoji, a smile. Leave me a smile. I would love that. And now I thought I would update you on my Regency reading project, my Jane Austen year and Regency reading project. If you would like to see a list of what I will be reading throughout the year, celebrating Jane Austen's 250th anniversary year, I will put a link in the description box below, which will take you to my website, where there is a blog post related to this topic and where you will find the actual list. And first up for reading Jane Austen this year, I have selected my most favorite of her 6 complete novels, Persuasion. If you don't already know the story or the synopsis, I will read it for you. In a story of love, regret, and second chances, Anne Elliot, a thoughtful and kind-hearted woman, was once persuaded to break off her engagement to a man she deeply loved, Captain Wentworth, due to his lack of wealth and status. Now 8 years later, Anne remains unmarried and quietly endures life with her snobbish family. When Captain Wentworth returns, wealthy and successful, their paths cross again. Amidst the intricate social dynamics of Regency England, Anne must navigate her lingering feelings for him while grappling with the pressures of family, society, and her own sense of self-worth. This is my favorite of the novels, and it is arguably regarded as Jane Austen's most mature work, and it is in many senses, as Jane herself was older when she wrote the story, and the heroine and the hero are older than some of her other characters in her other novels. Anne Elliot is about 27 when the novel opens, and Frederick Wentworth is 30, 31. So they have experienced some life, and I think especially maybe readers of a similar age or more will appreciate where the characters are in life and how love changes with time or grows stronger with time, as the case is for Anne and Frederick Wentworth, in spite of the years that have passed. I find the love story very beautiful in the separation time that they experienced. And Anne was young. She was very early 20s when she was persuaded by family and a family friend that her love interest was not suitable for her. And he had no money. He had little to recommend to himself. And they did not realize that people grow, people change, people have opportunities to grow, and the preoccupation with wealth within the family is very interesting because Anne's father is a bit of a spendthrift, and at the beginning of the novel, they must retrench from Kellynch Hall and live in Bath with a little bit less means, and the very underpinnings of how society works in terms of material wealth and manners. It's all very fascinating, but the love story, of course, is the most profound portion of the story. How we still love even when separated. How we navigate our feelings of love when we have been disappointed. And how all of that may change over time. And I found a very interesting article in Wikipedia regarding the famous love letter scene from Persuasion, and it gives a little bit of detail about the character of Frederick Wentworth and how he was modeling the ideal man in many ways, that Jane Austen wrote him as such, a man of manners, and it was a wonderful article. I will leave a link for you in the description box. But the letter is such a beautiful, poignant moment in the story. And if you are a fan of Jane Austen, if you are a particular fan of Persuasion, then you know the letter, you know the moment. And I can't resist reading it aloud because it's one of the most beautiful love letters ever written, and especially now in an age when we're in a digital age and everything is, well, down to very anachronisms and emojis to express ourselves. The power of words still endures, and it's no wonder that we still appreciate words and the deep feeling of these words even today. Captain Wentworth writing to Anne Elliot. I can listen no longer in silence. I must speak to you by such means as are within my reach. You pierce my soul. I am half agony, half hope. Tell me that I am not too late, that such precious feelings are gone forever. I offer myself to you again, with the heart evermore yours, evermore your own, than when you almost broke it 8.5 years ago. Dare not say that man forgets sooner than woman, that his love has earlier death. I have loved none but you. Unjust I may have been, weak and resentful. I have been, but never inconstant. You alone have brought me to Bath. For you alone I think and plan. Have you not seen this? Can you fail to have understood my wishes? I had not wished even these 10 days I could read your feelings, as I think you must have penetrated mine. I can hardly write. I am every instant hearing something which overpowers me. You sink your voice, but I can distinguish the tones of that voice when they would be lost on others. Too good, too excellent creature, you do us justice indeed. You do believe that there is true attachment and constancy among men. Believe it to be most fervent, most undeviating, in F.W. Frederick Wentworth. I must go, uncertain of my fate, but I shall return hither, to follow your party as soon as possible. A word, a look, will be enough to decide whether I enter your father's house this evening or never. Words. The power of words. If anyone is wondering, I especially appreciate the film adaptation from 1995 of Persuasion, starring Ciarán Hinds and Amanda Root. I feel that one in particular, visually and especially emotionally, really encapsulates the spirit and the feeling of Persuasion very well. It is hard to do justice to these stories which have, for centuries now, many years now, been in the pantheon of reading and appreciation. And my humble thoughts on this story are just my own, and I hope that you will share yours. If this is a novel that you appreciate, if you are a Jane Austen fan, I would love to hear your thoughts on this book. And for the summer, I will be reading the Susan Kay duology, None But You and For You Alone, which is written from the perspective of Captain Frederick Wentworth. I don't read a lot of the retellings, the reimagined Jane Austen works. I've read some. Some have been very interesting. Some have been sometimes I feel like just an excuse to write a romantic story and place a lot of sex scenes in it, to be quite honest. Some of them I've just really not plain enjoyed. But the duology from Captain Wentworth's perspective, None But You and For You Alone, I read them many years ago and I enjoyed them very much, and I haven't revisited those for a while, so during the summer I will revisit those and will be interested to see how much I appreciate them now as much as I do Persuasion. And more Jane Austen. I have borrowed from the library Jane Austen's Letters, edited by Jane Austen expert Deirdre Leif. And this was another gem of a book. It was the kind that was very lovely to dip in and out of during the month of February with reading Persuasion, as well as all of my other books during the month. Being a Jane Austen fan, I enjoy reading about her life, and I do greatly enjoy books of letters by people that I admire, diaries, journals, letters. This is a beautiful collection, and a great part of the book is footnotes. I'm sorry for the light change. I hope you can see the last about third of the book is and the footnotes that correspond with the letters. And Jane Austen has a wonderful way of writing that seems very much like reading something out of her novels. I will read just a small portion of one. This is to her sister Cassandra, the 7th through the 8th of January, 1807, Southampton. My dear Cassandra, you were mistaken supposing I should expect your letter on Sunday. I had no idea of hearing from you before Tuesday, and my pleasure yesterday was therefore unhurt by any previous disappointment. I thank you for writing so much. You must really have sent me the value of 2 letters in one. We are extremely glad to hear that Elizabeth is so much better, and I hope you will be sensible of still further amendment to her when you return from Canterbury. Of your visit there I must now speak incessantly in surprises, but pleases me more, and I consider it a very just and honorable distinction of you, and not less to the credit of Mrs. Knight. I have no doubt of your spending your time with her more pleasantly in quiet and rational conversation, and am so far from thinking of her expectations of you will be deceived, that my only fear is of your being so agreeable, so much to her taste, as to make her wish to keep you with her forever. I think that is very sweet. Letter to her sister. There are a lot of letters to her sister in this volume, as well as other family members and many other people in her circle, Jane Austen's circle. And I think that gives a little bit of the flavor of her letters. Especially the ones to her sister have, of course, a very casual expression. But there is something about some of the letters that feel almost like that they are pages out of the novels, that she could be speaking about characters that she has written. And if you are a Jane Austen fan, and if you have not encountered this book before, I highly recommend this. It's lovely to dip in and out of while you're reading another one of her books or something else from the time period. One last book today related to Jane Austen and my Regency reading is Jane Austen Embroidery. Authentic Embroidery Projects for Modern Stitchers by Jennie Batchelor, who is an educator and writes on women's writing, women's dress, women's matters, and Alison Larkin, who is an embroiderer and dressmaker. This lovely little book is really very interesting because it is compiled of stitchery projects that the modern stitcher can make that are inspired by actual patterns from the Regency period. I believe that they have been compiled from patterns from a little bit earlier, the 1770s through 1810. It is based on real patterns, real material. Some of the patterns will come from the Ladies Magazine, which was a very popular long-running magazine publication for women that contained patterns for needlework designs, so crochet, even embroidery, not the least. But it also contained informational articles on the sciences and the arts. It sampled a little bit of everything for the modern woman to expand her knowledge of the world and her home by needlework. And maybe those who do not know, Jane Austen was an excellent woman with a needle and thread. She would have learned needlework at a very young age, as most young women, young girls were in the Regency period and before and after. And she enjoyed needlework. She enjoyed sewing, embroidering, making clothes. She very much enjoyed things of the domestic sphere. And there is, I believe, a shawl at one of the homes that inspired a project in this book. I will do a cutaway so that you may have a look at some of the projects, because they are very inspiring and they're very doable. It's very well presented with information on how to get started with needlework if maybe you haven't before, and what tools and materials that you will need. And each chapter offers a project for the beginner to the intermediate or more advanced person with needlework experience. And I have found a lot of projects that I wouldn't mind doing myself. This one is in particular, in the cutaway I will show more of this one. It's a tablecloth with a very beautiful autumn inspired leaf motif. I used to do a lot of needlework once upon a time, embroidery. I used to love Victorian inspired silk ribbon embroidery. That was a bit of an expensive hobby, but thankfully DMC quality cotton embroidery floss has been available for a long time as an alternative. And I haven't done very much needlework for a while, but this book has me thinking that maybe some projects could be down the line, and it just is packed with inspiration. The beauty of the projects are very translatable beyond what is showcased in the book. Some of the embroidery could also be very well done as maybe details on the collar of a blouse or a shirt, a pocket detail. And there's just a lot of ways that you could make great use of these Regency inspired designs. If you are fond of needlework and Jane Austen, I think you will greatly enjoy this book if you haven't encountered it already. And honestly, I think Jane Austen would approve. My apologies for the fluctuations of sound and light today, I hope that this is still enjoyable for you to watch and to listen to. And I hope that you don't mind that this was a longer episode this time, since I've been combining the Jane Austen and Regency reading along with my regular Tea With Me reading update video. The whole encompassing most of the month of February. I have a bonus Tea With Me episode coming up, a little extra fiction to share. I'm really excited for that one, and I hope to be able to share that with you next week. In the meantime, if you would like to share any thoughts on what has been shared today or any recommendations, you know I love those recommendations. And so, until next time when we meet again for another cup of tea and a book chat, I wish you happy reading and, as always, many blessings.